Good evening. How's everybody doing? Hopefully my cameras are all set in a good spot. Everything was sort of adjusted over the holidays. How's everybody doing? Hopefully your holiday went well. I'm a bit quiet. Let's see if I can fix that. Turning it up. Sound check. Any better? All right. I can try and get this a little closer as well. I just don't want to toss a shadow on my stuff. So yeah, first one of 2020. I figured I'd start it off with some old school stuff. I've got a couple of Battletech figures I'm looking to paint. I have already completed the Atlas. I've got a commando. I think I have two different kinds of commandos in here. Possibly a Clint. I'm not sure what this big sucker is. Started them up a little while ago. I want to see if I can get through and finish them. Obviously, I've done the Atlas. He's sort of my proof of concept, and why wouldn't I start with an Atlas? Because, I mean, Atlas, right? I've also got a second set, which has an Axeman, a Stalker, a Dragon, and a Warhammer. And the Warhammer has been started. Did a little bit of detail work on them. Started to get the paint coloring in there. And the last one I have has not been started yet. We've got an old Jaeger mech. We've got a fire starter. I think this is a blackjack. And I think this last one is a grasshopper. So we're going to be working on those guys. We'll see if we can get to the third set. I'm thinking that the third set that are currently just primed, I might do in a like a German tiger stripe pattern, if I can pull it off. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to start up by working on some of these guys. Let's go with this guy. Let's go with this Clint. Started them in October, so I wanted to do kind of Halloween themed. So the Atlas has got a big old jack-o'-lantern head with a green stem radar, and it's all black and orange with a bit of brass in there. So we're going to take a look at this guy and see how I want to do it. Could be interesting. Just got the sort of divided paint scheme at the moment. What I'm gonna need to do is pick out some metallics. And I'm gonna start with I think I'm going to look at the weapon bronze here. So we got Army Painter, War Paints, and I'm going to start with some bronze. I'm going to pick out some of the details in bronze just to kind of get some differentiation. A friend of mine asked me to paint a bunch of his miniatures. He has a bin of about 300 of them. I was like, sure. So he gave me a little bit of money and he gave me a first batch. In the first batch were these guys. And I was like, well, why don't I start with the Battletech stuff? Because it'll be fun. Hello to everybody in chat. Feel free to say hello. Let's see if I can get back into where I should be. All right. What do I want to make brass on this sucker? I'm going to start with the autocannon barrel. I'm using one of my detail brushes, but I probably don't really need to. The question is, do I want to switch back? Now these guys, these minis are ancient in terms of miniatures. I'm fairly certain, after checking the bases on a couple of them, that almost all of them were done early to mid 80s. So the batch that my friend got from somebody has a lot of these old suckers in them. I don't know. I don't think it's entirely Battletech stuff, but they're in better shape than most of the other things, if I recall correctly. Now, realistically, all we're looking to do is a quick paint job. He was like, I just want them to have some color on them. So if we do something like a game night or whatever, and somebody gets the bright idea to play Battletech, then we'll have some minis to work with. Alright, what else should I do? Pick out some of the bits of the face here. The detail's a little bit lax. I think it's really just because the minis are so old. So it's one of those things where they aren't necessarily, the mold casting isn't that detailed. It's all done in pewter or lead, so they aren't necessarily hyper detailed when you get into it anyway. So we'll see what we can do. It might require some fanciness when it comes to adding our own details. Get a little bit tricky. But realistically, I just want to get the paint jobs clean and smooth so they look good on the table. Trying to give them some brass kneecaps. I don't know why. Just because. I might also take some flat black, make some details, cut up some of the large swaths of orange, and then take some of the orange and put it back on the black to kind of mix things up a little bit. The Atlas has got a black foot and an orange foot, so I might do that with the rest of these guys. Oh, incoming cat. Everybody watch out. Hi, Sif. What's up? You gonna say hello? Or are you just gonna poke your head over here and then walk away? I don't know if you're allowed to just tease kittens on Twitch. One second. Say hi. She's my buddy. She's the one that hangs out with me all the time. That's Sif. S-I-F. She is 7 years old now. It's kind of weird. I don't feel like she should be 7 yet. But then I remember that I've been in my house for 6 years. And I'm like, oh yeah. We did get her just before we got the house. Picking out some details on the inside of his feet. I think one of these feet needs to be black. Definitely. We'll get back around to that in a second. I think the nozzles on the back here, his jump jets, are going to also be brass, but I might do some Might try and work some heat discoloration into the points, exhaust ports, just because. What I'm doing right now is basically getting this sort of base coating in. Because I'm going to do some shading to it with an ink wash just to make them look a little more dirty, a little more worn. I don't want them to be pristine. It's not like they just rolled off the assembly line or anything. There's a vent back here. I'm going to put the metal grating on it. I'm going to do that in brass as well. Okay. Pretty simple. But it'll pick it out. Pick it out nice and bright. I usually like to make the swivels on things like his legs that color. I'm going to move up to one of my bigger brushes because I don't need to use the detail brush like I had said. There is my standard brush. Alright. I usually wet the bristles. Then roll the tip in the paint and draw it forward. That'll get you a nice point. And draw toward yourself. Remember to breathe. Don't worry about making too much mistakes because you'll get there. Anything that you paint underneath, you can paint over the details on the top when you get back to that spot. So, right now I'm not really worried about it. Again, these guys are supposed to be a quick paint. He wasn't looking for like super character detail or anything like that. So, just want to get the colors on it, make things stand out a bit. Make it so that you can actually see some of the detail on them from a couple of feet away. Not all your models have to be painted like character model quality. I say character model, that's an old holdover from playing Warhammer ages ago, when you used to have to paint generals and things like that, and characters with names and whatnot. And then there were line troops, you know, foot soldiers and cavalry and whatnot that were essentially nameless. So you didn't have to really do too much with them. Just trying to pick out some more bits in metallic just so you can see them. Some access pipes down here, some sort of venting. We'll put some metallic on that so it'll show up. Some vents over here. There's some of these little like rotators on his shoulder. He's probably got one over here. Some like swivel points or something. Bye, Sif. And there's a gun barrel. I'll brass it up. I don't know why. But when I was doing the Atlas, it felt like a good choice at the time. And these guys are all going to be part of their own lance. I randomly picked for lances. It's not like I went and figured out which versions of the mechs these were. Like, I don't know if this is a Clint 2C or a Clint like A or whatever. Laser cannons, auto cannons. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. So I don't know if it's a good match with the Atlas, but I figure Atlas can carry the day in most cases. Alright. Brass done on him. I believe this is a commando. A light scout. We'll work on this guy next, get some more brass detail on him. I'm going to try and do all the brass first because I want to finish this lance. I really do want to try some of the crazy camo patterns on On the black ones, though, I'm going to probably base them in like green. I think I'm going to make the ring on this brass, but not necessarily the whole barrel. I'm primarily using the brass to kind of break up flat spaces. Isn't going on perfectly, but that's actually all right. Look a little tarnished. Should add some character to it. I'm not too worried about being crazy. Just want to make it smooth. Alright, so this ball joint up here I'm going to do in brass as well. And again, I didn't exactly think that these guys were going to be camo patterned. I just decided to do a split diagonal pattern slash down the middle so that there's black and orange. These guys were more themed for color palette than anything else because I was starting to paint them on Halloween and then I stopped and got away from them and did some other stuff. And cap on that cannon needs to be done in brass. That's what happens though. A lot of times when I'm painting figures, depending on what time of year I'm painting them, I'll kind of paint them in seasonal colors. Like whenever I look at a Wood Elf Blood Bowl team or a Wood Elf army or something like that, I have a tendency to start that in the fall for some reason, and I usually end up trying to make them in the fall colors. So it's mostly warm colors instead of like greens and blues and yellows. I haven't done any full-on winter ones though, which could be pretty cool. Instead of having leaves on the ground and stuff like that, they would have icicles and snowbanks. Alright. Yeah, the knees are all ball jointed, so I may as well do those like I did the shoulder joints. Hopefully you guys don't hear my space heater in the background. It's getting a little cold. It was like 15 degrees here today. Alright, getting that knee joint. Should be pretty easy. Just gotta be careful around the back because that leg's a little bit bent. Can always go back. I'm going to do a wash, like I said, to kind of blend in, get some of the cracks exposed, things like that. So I'll be going back and touching up areas and kind of highlighting stuff with the orange, so I can always go and catch any spots that I went over. Shouldn't be a big deal. Brass doesn't show up too great on the orange, but we'll get there. I'm also going to paint the vents for his jump jets in brass. I don't know if you can see it, but there's definitely some malformed chunks on the old pewter figure, lead figure, whatever they are. Get this bar, I'll leave his engine mostly taken care of. Maybe I'll do this. Brighten it up a little bit. Anybody from the old Games Workshop crew in chat? Or from the 131 club? Be kind of cool to chat with you guys again. Alright. This one is mostly done with the brass stuff. It's got a lot of weird details on his chest. Its chest. So I'm not entirely sure what that stuff is, but just going to pick out some of the shapes. Make things stand out just a little bit. A lot of these guys are kind of flat in a lot of places, so gotta do something to spruce it up a little bit. End cap. They're going to be brass as well. Copper, brass, whatever. Bronze. Just giving it some color to pick out some detail. Most of the time, I was doing a little bit of looking for images, and I posted some of them on the side. Got some tank pictures and whatnot, and some old Battletech pictures, and some new Battletech pictures. All the tanks are always like one color scheme. They don't pick out details because, well, you don't want to draw attention to those parts, usually. Alright. Anything I want to do on the legs? Yeah, backs of the knees. But like I said, these guys were sort of just fun, started on Halloween. Wanted to pick out a Halloween color scheme for them. Plus they'll look kind of cool on the table, I think. Alright. Where is the black? Where is my black? Flat black. War paint's matte black. There's a little guy. The war paint's color line, it's actually their black is really good. It goes on pretty well. So I'm gonna take most of this one's foot over here, and I'm gonna make it black. I typically like to draw the brush towards me, get better control that way. Sometimes you don't have to worry about it too much. Like I'm down here at the bottom of the figure, so I'm not going to get it on anything else. So I'm just going to work it on in here. Be nice and easy with it. I realize that you guys are seeing the figures upside down, but I haven't figured out a good armature to put the camera directly above, like pointing straight down on the palette. So it's still at an angle, unfortunately. Again, working on a foot's pretty easy. There's nothing you can bump into, so you can be pretty quick. Just got to make sure you don't go over anything up at the top. You can be quick, just don't rush. The toes. Inside the foot area. Now I went and I covered that little bronze detail a little bit, so I'm going to have to go back in and touch that up. But it's not that big of a deal. Just a second. Looks better. Anything else? Any other little chunks that I'd like to color black at the moment? Why don't I do this fin? Yeah, that'll be cool. I'll do this little fin on the back of the leg. Do that in black. You don't necessarily need to make things perfectly symmetrical. Like the front, they got these little circular things here in the front of the leg. I'm going to make this one black, but I'm going to leave the back half of it orange. It's just a half and half. Again, just breaking up the big blocky sections. Not absolutely necessary, but it helps make it look more interesting. I clean my brushes a lot in the middle of things because I don't like it when paint builds up. How's everybody doing tonight? See some new folks in the chat. Some old folks came back, which is nice. It's nice to have return viewers. Tell your friends, send a link. Let me know if I need to do anything different. Poke me if my audio is too low. Again, hope everybody's holiday went well. If you celebrated Christmas, hope it was a good Christmas. I gotta adjust where I put my camera. This one. I feel like I'm cutting the top of my head off all the time. Whoops. Alright. I'll make this hand black as well. The inside of the hand. Yeah, that'll do. Like I said, there's not a whole heck of a lot of detail on a lot of these guys. They're a wee bit bland, but a nice quick paint job will actually make them look a lot better. They're not just going to be gray figures on the tabletop. Something kind of interesting about them. Thinking next week I might start an interesting stream, sort of a series, where I get into some of the, or all of the, miniatures from the Critical Role voice actor D&D game that happens on Twitch at 10 o'clock after, you know, my stream. So what I might do is I might start painting some of the first run. They've done 2 campaigns so far. I might start painting some of the first campaign guys. The original characters. See if I can get some folks to show up. Next. I'm going to take one of the, where are my washes? Yeah, no row. How's everybody doing tonight? All right. Duck wash. I love this stuff. I'm gonna run out of this bottle. I use a lot of this stuff. I'm gonna have to actually just order myself a second bottle. All right. Last time I did washes with you guys, hopefully people remember. I was like the secret, the secret to doing washes. Good, Navi. Don't go dying on me. You basically just got to be generous with it. Don't have to worry about getting it on the black sections because it's dark enough as is. But I do want to go over all of the metallic portions. Just generously slap it on there. Because it's going to start running into, what you want it to do is you want to have enough so that it gets into the grooves and separates and makes some actual shadows. You'll start seeing more details. Be pretty generous with it, because you can just go in with the brush tip and even it out a little bit. But what it's going to do is it's going to pick up all the grooves and all the cracks and all the other little bits and start highlighting it, or not highlighting it, shading it literally. You'll be able to see everything. Like, I don't know if you can see it, but on the leg of this guy now, there's a lot more going on. My finger's in the way. So you see a lot more into the details once you get that done. It especially helps out on minis that are primarily flat surfaces but have like little divots and stuff, because it can just wash into the corners and pick up all of that extra stuff. You'll see it. That way you don't have to go in and like put an undercoat and then go in and try and pick out all the plates individually with your brush, because that's just a pain in the butt. Nobody needs to do that, because that's why they made these wash colors and quick shades and all sorts of other bits. Just makes it easier to work with. Makes it less of a pain in the ass. All right. 1, 2. This guy's got a very round dome, so that's going to be a little weird because I don't think it's going to really have anywhere to kind of seep into. So we'll just spread it out. Put it across the front like this. Goal is to basically get all of the surfaces with a fairly generous amount of the wash so that it can seep in into all the cracks. Pick out the details for you. Like I said, these guys don't have a super lot of detail, but they do have a lot of little lines that represent plates and panels and armor plates and various bits, but they're primarily flat. So it would be a huge pain in the butt to get in there and kind of try and trace everything out with a brush. So you do it this way. See, he's getting a lot more detail on him now. Start seeing all the panel joints and stuff. Hopefully this big guy has more detail than he's letting on, because there's not a whole heck of a lot. Like, there's a lot of big flat spaces on this one, like nothing going on. So it's a little not great. If I can get it in to the edges around the cockpit area. Make sure you chirp at me if I'm tending to get out of camera. Trying not to. I'm trying to get better at that. But sometimes for my own health, I sit up a little straighter and then don't necessarily come back in to the same spot that I was at before. This guy's got some jump jet vents back here. We're going to color them in a little bit with this. Get the metallic up at the top. Make sure you get under the arm locations. Let that wash in. I'm trying to hold on to only the black portions so that I can not worry about getting the ink all over my hands. I used to do that a lot. I'd be done and be like, yay, and then look at my fingers and they're just covered. I look like I worked on a oil change for my car or something like that for an hour and a half. Where is, I need to grab this and then this. Because I need to get this leg. I mean, realistically, you can think of this just like it's accumulated dust and dirt and oil and whatnot. Getting into the cracks. A little bit more. Just a wee bit more. Finish off this foot. There we go. That should do. We'll let that guy dry up a bit. Pick up this guy again and hit the brass portions that were on the black sections that I might have missed. Trying to get into those cracks as well. I feel like I'm going to have to go back and highlight those a little bit more. But we'll see. That brush off a bit. Alright, slide these guys over. I don't know if you'll be able to see them. I should put them on this side, but that's going to be in right where I'm painting, so not going to work out that way. Pop them over here for a second. Well, luckily I did remember to hit record. I think. Did I? Yeah, it's recording. Typical me. Be like halfway through something. The first couple of times the entire Jinzo miniature didn't record it. So, alright. So in an effort to get them closer to this, what do I need to hit? Color-wise, they're looking the same. That's good. dirty, dingy old mix. Alright. What was I going to do? I was going to put... Let me go in and do some highlights. We're going to do some highlights on the black. Just a little bit. Something faint to make it look like there's a little bit of light going on there. I used this stuff last time on the Atlas Dark Stone. It's like a gray-brown. It's not quite black. Made for an interesting little tone. I'm actually going to use a detail brush on that again, I think. That was my large brush. Because I want to go in and pick out some chunks that are upraised. How are you doing? Yeah, you're pretty dry. See if this works out. So I want to kind of hit stuff like the edge of this. Might be tricky to see. I may have to go back and do something slightly lighter, but we're going to start. We'll start with this. Just hit some of the upraised sections of it, like where the light's hitting it from my table lamp. Just right up along the top edges. Right up along the top of this. I think I might actually turn that green so it fits with the Atlas. But we'll get in here. We'll get it on the upraised sections right here because it's a flat piece. And I'm going to pick out the very corners of these plates and like the underside of some of those missile ports. I'm going to leave the low angled plates completely black because they're underneath. We're going to get the back of his hand and the tops of some of the fingers. Kind of a dry brush. Then we'll hit the top of his foot, not drop him on my desk. Back here. Mostly just parts that are going to catch the light. Tip of the barrel. Sticking up maybe a little bit of a bit on top of the barrel. Back down here on this drum section. Sometimes you want to trace out the edge of a big block like this square. Just kind of trace the corner out a bit. Give you some highlight there. Down along the back of his leg to the orange, don't go past. Back of that vent, back of that. Any place that's a flat surface is going to be a slightly lighter color than the rest of the black. In this case, a very slightly lighter. I'm not doing a whole lot of a shade difference at the moment, but I might pick out some of the corners. I might go back to the Atlas and do a little bit of a lighter gray on some of the bits. Even if you only do like half of them. You start giving the impression of some lighting from an angle, usually up above, one direction, sort of a sunlight effect, but you don't want to get anything underneath, and you don't want to really go into the cracks. It's good to pick out the corners this way. anything that I painted black, I'm going to touch up with this a little bit. Top half of these swivel joints for his leg. The ridge along the back of the leg, the calf area. Some of these plates. These plates could use a little bit more defining, so I'm definitely going to come back down here. I'll pick a slightly lighter color. I'm not going to go white, but I might do like a gray highlight to pick out some of the plate edges. Make it look a little more interesting. I mean, realistically, just have some fun with it. Because once you get in there, you'll start seeing where you need to go. A lot of people kind of tense up and say their hands are too shaky or whatever, but the trick is to just kind of like let it go where it goes. You'll get it. You'll figure it out. Best painter I know has super shaky hands until he grabs a paintbrush. Once he grabs a paintbrush, his hands are steady. He could be a surgeon with a paintbrush if he really wanted to. Alright. Grab a slightly lighter gray. And do some extreme highlight with War Painter uniform gray. Now that's going to be real bright, so I'm actually going to mix it with some of the black if the black is still viable. It's a little dry, but that's okay. Just want to darken it down a tiny bit. I mean, we're only really going to be doing a couple of sections with it, so I don't need a whole lot. There we go. Again, keep your brush clean. Try to make sure you don't get any paint up at the base of the bristle, up by that metal bit at the end. You don't want it up there. It's bad for the brush. It's how you lose brushes. When that stuff gets in there, it starts to splay out the bristles. And then you don't have any sort of control about where you're putting paint, and then that's no good. A little bit of light up there at the very tip. One little streak down here. That should be okay. I'll do a little bit on this. A little bit right here. A little bit right there. Right on the corner of this one, up over this rotator, tucked in here. Starting to see some definition coming out. Get the raised metal bits. I'll do. Next little guy. too much about being super neat. Just want to pick out some corners. You're looking to add a little bit of definition to some of these bits. Like I said, they're sort of flat. They're hard to get details on. So just find some edges. Put a little color on it. Anybody got any fun plans for the weekend? I am surprisingly out of plans for my weekend. Whenever I haven't made any big plans for the weekend, then it becomes a Leona weekend, which is awesome. So I've always got a backup plan. Leona's my kid. If anybody was wondering. Hi, Leona. Just in case you watch this later. There we go. We get the inside of this foot. Not a lot of it though, just kind of like the corners that might be sticking out because it's literally in the shadow of the rest of the neck. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. Last one. Did I skip this guy with the other colors? I might have. Mostly because I'm an idiot. Sometimes I like to do like a little bit of cross-hatching, sort of, to make it look... Where are we? I'm not sure if you can see it. Yeah. There we go, highlighted. Kind of gives it a little bit more. If it's a big flat surface, sort of give the illusion of texture. Works out pretty well most of the time. Gonna paint his missile pods here. So one of these guys, the Warhammer that I have, somebody put the missile pod on sideways. It's not facing the correct direction. Thanks, Essie. I apologize. Where am I going? Switching around to the back. Gonna pick out some detail on the back of his foot. Back of the leg. Just get a couple of the flat panels with a little bit of a reflective highlight. The ridge at the top of his back here definitely needs an edge. Back of the shoulder, back of the arm. These crazy old lead minis though, man. They're so soft. This arm, I don't know if you can see it, but this arm is all twisty. It's super weird. I feel like it's been bumped, bent, and readjusted multiple times. I mean, it likely has. Like I said, these guys are 80s. This one is 83, according to the bottom of the base. I suppose, potentially, that means that these miniatures could be older than some of the folks watching this. which is a little weird to me. And also makes me feel a little old. But whatever. I'm fine with it. Alright. Coming along. He's doing okay. Alright. I'm gonna do the cockpit and the green next on these guys. And by the green, I mean this little one. This small laser on his head. It's going to do green so it looks like the radar dish on top of the Atlas. So that's green, like a pumpkin. He's supposed to be pumpkin-headed. Welcome back, Cacao. How was your holiday? Last time I saw you was 2 weeks ago. Hope everything went well. If you had to travel, hopefully you didn't bump into too much crap. Traffic and whatnot. Because that sucks. I'm kind of crotchety when it comes to holidays. I don't really want to travel. Like, I don't want to head out for Thanksgiving or drive for Christmas. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like you look forward to it. You're like, it's vacation time. I don't have to do anything. Don't gotta go to work. Blah blah blah. And then you're like, except I gotta clean up my house and I gotta get ready for family to come over. And it's not that the visit's not nice. You know what I mean? It's just basically you get kind of stuck. You're like, yeah, it's holiday. I don't have to do. I do have to do a whole bunch of crap. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a shut-in. Who knows? All right. Is there anything I can do on these guys to kind of help match that up? Not so much. Alright. Yeah, these are dark. One second. Not entirely sure that's going to help. A little bit more ambient light going on. No, I've never used a wet palette. In so much that, to be perfectly honest, I think I would have to look that up. I've heard the term used a whole bunch, but I've never actually gone and messed with one or played with one. So what does it do? Like, what's the function? Really? Interesting. I'm just used to using a really, really tiny amount. Well, that's pretty cool. Are you guys getting... No, okay. I thought I was picking up my music. I didn't want to have anything come through over Twitch and get you know, in trouble. What do you usually paint, Cacao? What army are you working on? Gonna do a little bit demonic yellow in the cockpit area. See if it actually takes. What? Which minis are you painting? Which 40k minis? You got an idea in mind? Got your eyes on one that you like yet? Okay. Alright, this is going to be tricky. I'm going to try and get in and get this cockpit taken care of. See if I can get to a spot where you can see it. Yeah, Space Marines are pretty good to paint on. They're pretty easy. Just because they're kind of big, blocky, wide area guys. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. If there's one piece of advice I can give to somebody who is starting to paint and put together minis, don't go overboard. Like, don't buy a huge box of stuff, because you'll start looking at it and you'll realize, or you'll start thinking, I'm never going to be able to finish this. There's just so much. Like, I used to manage a games workshop, so I had an employee discount. And I worked in IT down in Connecticut for a while when I first got into Warhammer. And I had a cheap little efficiency apartment, was living by myself, didn't have any real financial responsibilities except making rent and paying utilities. So the guys at the shop really liked me, because towards the end of the month is when I'd show up and I'd be like, hey, how close are you guys to your target for the month? And they'd be like, oh, we're like $200 off. And I'd be like, sweet. I want that box and that unit, and I need some more paints. And yeah, here you go. That should be about $240. So I made friends real fast down there with the employees. And the regional manager, or at least the district manager. So I started getting things for employee discount. Which meant I ended up with a lot of figures. You know, which felt great at the time. And then I realized I've got way too many figures to paint. I am in so much trouble. So I started trying to make sure I was focusing. But that was the time when I was really just kind of getting into things. I'd been playing for a little bit, but I hadn't been really painting too much. All right, where's my orange? You finished a Squad of Marines? Or was it like a starter kit? You only had like 5? Alright. Where am I? Am I drifting out of frame yet? So what I'm doing now is I'm going back and I'm just kind of hitting some of those orange plates that I had kind of darkened up a bit, because I want to see if I can get some more detail into them and get some highlights on those too. I keep thinking Death Korps of Krieg and not Death Guard. Death Guard are Chaos, correct? It's been a long time. Okay. Chaos were fun to paint because you could do crazy shit with them. Like, you could get into some nutty color schemes, and you could do stuff like, especially on things like Death Guard, you could like full on green stuff pustules and all sorts of creepy crap all over them. So those guys are fun to do. And they usually had like the rhinos, the troop transports and whatnot, usually had a lot of extra bits you could add on for decoration for Chaos, which was kind of fun. Yep. That's it. It was part of the fun. I liked painting orcs for the same reason, because you could take their vehicles and just like scrap them together, especially the trucks. I think it was encouraged. I know I encouraged it when people were trying to get orc trucks and buggies and whatnot. We'd find other kits, like other models from different lines, and just scrap them together, because the orc trucks, the old ones, just weren't big enough. They were super tiny. Yeah. Stealing other bits. If you could find the right scale minis, you could do some goofy crap. Like attach some similarly scaled World War II tank bits, just plates and whatnot, to things, and do all sorts of stuff. Yep. That's what I heard. Alright. As I had mentioned, these guys are supposed to be quick paint. They're not supposed to be super crazy detailed. So, rather than get too nuts with highlighting and stuff and blending and whatnot on these guys, I'm going to get close to being calling them done. Move on to the next lance. I'm just going to try and finish up some patches of the orange for highlights. Fix up some of the heads. These are Battletech minis. They are ancient in terms of miniatures. Most of the ones I'm working on tonight are from the 80s, and they are for Battletech, the strategy game. Back when Warhammer, I think, was still Rogue Trader. Old tabletop strategy stuff. These particular figures actually belonged to a friend of mine, and he asked if I'd be willing to paint his enormous bin of miniatures that he got in kind of a batch from a random person. He's got like 300 of them. So they've been sitting around for a long time. And I was like, yeah, I'll paint them. So he gave me a little bit of money to start, and he gave me a dozen. Gave me a dozen battle mechs to work on, plus some other stuff. So occasionally we'll do game days over at his house, though not so much recently, and pick random board games or whatnot. I mean, he's got a huge library downstairs in his basement of various types of gaming. So yeah, it's cool. And these are kind of fun. I mean, they're real simple, and they're sort of a nice break in between other figures that I've been doing. Like, I've been trying to get my new Dark Elf Blood Bowl team painted up and finished. And there's a lot of detail on the new ones. I was really surprised. The change from old Blood Bowl to the new run that they're doing is ridiculous. Like, there is so much going on the new figures. When I was putting them together, I was like, what the hell is this? The Witch Elf, the right hand of the Witch Elf model for Dark Elves, you put the goddamn thumb on. I was like, what? That's stupid. But, you know, they're cool figures. Like, they got a huge, like I said, there's a huge improvement over the original run. And I like to see them going back and visiting some of their, like, single box board game style adventure games and or Blood Bowl, Mordheim, all of those ones, those old ones. So they're doing a lot of that lately, which was pretty cool. The thumb? But I get real close. You guys looking at my thumb? Oh yeah. It was ridiculous. I hold on. I think I have the instructions. So she's got like, hold on. I forgot I didn't have a mic on that particular scene. But anyway, she's got her hands, right, have these long finger blades on them. And the instructions are silly. The instructions are silly because they're just like, hey, take this bit, take this other bit, take this teeny weeny little thing. Where is she? All right. You see part 52? Part 52 is her thumb. Part 54 and 53 are little teeny belts that hang off of her belt because she's a super edgelord, so she has to have belts for her belt. And that's the way that goes. But yeah, so all those little bits, where is... So this is a lineman. The lineman has pieces 26. And those are little blades on his legs. And those are tiny too. It's nuts. Yeah. I mean, that's Dark Elves. Dark Elves are all just random spikes, man. Because they don't want to be like other elves. And the way they differentiated themselves was by adding spikes. Yes, you do. But, I mean, to their credit, all the pieces fit very specifically. So it's not like you're just attaching it to a flat surface. There's a tiny little nub for the thumb and a little indentation. And you put the smallest amount of their plastic glue on it, and you just hold it together for 3 seconds and you can let it go. And it's there, and you leave it, and it fuses. Everything's got a little socket, which is nice. So, all right. I think these boys are basically finished. I'll do. I'm going to do the bases real quick. I'm not doing anything special like flocking them. On the Atlas, I just sort of did some color because he's supposed to be huge. So I'm going to grab my standard brush, dig back into this green here, try and loosen it back up a little bit. It's a little chunky. It chunked up on me. I guess this would be what a wet palette would be good for. And we're going to go and just paint on some green, and then I'll go back with the brown. Pick up some spots. Make some random organic shapes. As far as what you have to glue on all those bits for the Dark Elves, I'm not entirely sure. I imagine it has something to do with the way they're cast or 3D printed, or they're not 3D printed, obviously, molded. Because they're really finely detailed, and there used to be a lot of flashing on the edges of GW minis. Round about when Privateer Press started doing War Machine, their minis were super clean. Like, you could take them out of the box, glue them together, and not have to cut off a single piece of flashing. And I think it opened people's eyes to like the quality of Games Workshop figures, because the old ones, while they were nice, they were more or less the only thing on, the only game in town. So it meant that they didn't really have to pay a lot of attention to how well they were cast and how well they were molded. Until somebody else started to make a mini game, and like legitimate mini game, like in the U.S. I think they were from Seattle, but they like the War Machine stuff. Privateer Press minis were super high quality, and I really liked them. I thought they were awesome. I've still got a huge chunk of them. I haven't played War Machine in a long time either, but it was a fun game. So the new run GW stuff that I've seen in the past couple of years, like their model quality has gone way up, the details, their sculpts have gone up in quality a lot. Like even the foot soldiers, the random rank and file troops are really detailed and really cool looking. And the models themselves on the sprues have much less mess. There's not a lot of flashing, there's not a lot of crap. The connection points that they're, like the parts where they're connected to the sprue, in most cases are either in a large flat area, so it's easy to deal with any sort of trim that you've got left on them, or they're tucked in a joint where that's being glued to another socket or something, so that part is by design covered when you assemble the model, so you don't have to even worry about it, and you never see any of those attachment points, which is super nice. And I'm surprised it took them this long to figure that shit out, because like that was kind of irritating. But I'm sorry. Did I show you what the green was? I believe I used green skin. So this is Army Painter green skin I used on the base. And then just going to go with oak brown. Going to get a bit of it because I'm just going to basically be making some organic shapes to represent runoff or whatever. Splurta, splurta, splurta. Get the edge. It's kind of funny, but when I first started painting, I never did the bases. And it took a little bit of coaxing for me to actually do it. I was more focused on trying to get the figures done than on worrying about if I needed to put flocking or sand or anything like that on the bases of the figures. But, man, you are not finished. You are not finished with a miniature until you finish the base. And it makes a huge difference. Like, you can paint a figure incredibly well. You know, professional Golden Demon competition style. And if you don't finish the base, and then you put it next to a miniature that's not quite as well painted, but the base is finished, flocked, it has grass or stones or color or something, the one with the finished base just looks better. And it was kind of surprising to me how much of a difference it made. But I've gone through and definitely started doing basing way more religiously in all my figures. Like, they need to be done. Because, wow. It really is. It's a huge difference. Just putting some brown. Trying to make, like, I don't know, footprint or worn areas or something like that. Because there's not much of a base on these. It's really just kind of a lead blob to keep them standing up. Again, no standardized bases on these guys. They fit into a hex mat kind of printed terrain board, like you played on a hex grid. So as long as they fit in it, it was fine. So they're all sorts of different shapes. They're not all on a round base. So they look a little weird standing next to each other. But they look okay. I mean, that's passable. It's quick paint. It's way better than they looked before. I'll stick with those guys. So again, it's kind of hard to see the bases and whatnot, but there we go. All right. One lance done. One lance done. I'll move my lamp a little bit more. Getting all into throwing shadows on stuff. Screwing up what I had set up before. My setup is super fluid. And not in like a science way, and I constantly am fidgeting with it to try to find the optimal position to get the correct lighting and all the other garbage. So I apologize for that. Alright, next up. Move these guys off. Alright, I'm going to put the Warhammer on, the Stalker, the Dragon, and the Axeman. These guys are going to be super simple because I'm just going to dark wash them mostly, and then I'll pick them out in blue. They're not going to be super exciting, and I'm just going to do a quick splash on these as we're stepping in. The other ones I'd like to work on, I might do the Jaeger mech or the Blackjack, because I'd really like to see if I can get that German paint job going before the half an hour is up for the night. So let me get my large brush out. Warhammer's pretty much set. The Dragon needs a little bit of work. Came in the wrong color. Yeah, that's the dry brush. That's a dry brush, idiot. Where's my large brush? There it is. So, let's hit the Axeman first. I guess this is probably a Hatchet Man and not an Axeman. The Axeman was way bigger. I think that Hatchet Man was 60 tons. So the way the mechs were categorized was based on tonnage. I don't know if you've ever played any of the Battletech stuff, video game wise. But it's pretty much the same thing. It's sort of just ported over into video games from the tabletop funsies, and they separated things out by tonnage. So you could have, when you set up a game to play, you could have a certain tonnage. And that was your restriction. That was your the equivalent of your points in Warhammer. So it kind of was sort of balanced around that. Not that the battle mechs were necessarily balanced around each other. very well. This was, before real hard game balance tournament craziness. It was literally just a tabletop stuff that you kind of played scenario. It's like, have you ever played Napoleonics? Napoleonics were weird, and World War II, World War One, miniature wargaming, because it wasn't necessarily set up to be competitive and even thing. A lot of them were historical. So if you think about coming from that, having to restrict yourself or pick a lance by tonnage was a huge step from, okay, the British had X, Y, and Z at this battle, at this historic battle, which means this is what they've got. And the Germans had all of this stuff, and we're gonna, we're gonna play this battle, and we're gonna see how it went, or see how it goes when we do miniatures and whatnot. So they can be a little weird. So when you get to the tonnage, you're like, cool, I want to play Battletech on this mat. And we are going to play a game where we bring 220 tons of mechs. All the mechs in a certain tonnage had a way you had to build them. There were ones that had lots of armor and less weapons and were slower. Some were scouts that were super fast and very light. The heavier a mech was, the slower it tended to go because the engine had to be bigger. So the engine would take up way too much tonnage for moving a 100-tonner as fast as a scout, and you couldn't put any armor or technically good weapons or whatever on them or stuff like that. So it was kind of internally balanced in a way. It was fun. I used to play a lot. I enjoyed it. A lot of the minis were plastic out of the box, gray ones that I never painted when I was younger. Some of them were these. It's interesting. Some of the washes are spreading funny on these guys. We're going to have to go back over those. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, look, it's running right off. That's going to be a problem. But it might not. We'll see what happens. Probably go back and do a little dry brushing to pick out some of the raised details. Whoops. Yeah, this is not going on well. Huh. Interesting. Alright, it's getting chunky. We're going to abort. Pull off some of this crap. Figure out what's going on. Gotta clean this guy up. Alright. What am I looking at? Can I actually get into at least one of the other ones? Oh, this old dusty guy. Jaeger mech. Alright. Move the Warhammer over. Move these guys out of the way. Those are still wet. Leave them right there. Alright. What to do. Alright, I am looking at What do we got? What do we got? If I add existing color reference. Okay. Make it. Let's try and find what I was looking for. It was pretty cool. If I were Battletech tanks. There, that guy. That's the one I want. Oh, right there. This one. Yeah. Battletech tanks. This guy. Okay. You see this sucker right here? I want to try and do that. That's what I want to do. Let's get rid of that one. So that's what I want to do right there. I want to see if I can pull that off. If I can pull that off, I'll be pretty happy. So I'm going to base that. What do you think? Probably with the green? Probably with the green. Here, you get out of the way. And you get out of the way. Alright. So, I need a dark green. So we're going to start with this one. This is Angel Green for War Paint's line. It's not Dark Angel Green because that would be copyright infringement. First thing I'm going to do is dust this guy off because he is dusty. My paints would not go on well. Oh boy. Clean, 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 clean. So, on these guys in this batch, there were some mechs, unfortunately, that showed up with... It was like a rubber cement, basically. And it was just a fat glob of rubber cement to keep things together. It was terrible. I don't know why you'd do that. You can kind of see it in this joint on the arm. You see how you can see through it? I'm gonna go this way. Both right over here on the shoulder and right over here on the shoulder. They're basically like rubber cemented in and not super well attached, which is kind of irritating, but we'll get it done. So, where's my green? Base coating with the large brush, watering it down a little bit. We'll see if I can pull this off. Looks like this one might be missing a piece up top because there's a big hole. I'm gonna just try and coat it as much as I can. I want the paint to be smooth. But that counts more for miniatures that are more detailed. This guy has a bunch of weird like little stripes and shit on them, but it's just like plates and grooves and stuff. That should be fine. Alright. So I'm thinking that next week I'll get back over into some fantasy figures. Get into some D&D stuff. Sort of gauge interest in painting all the Critical Role miniatures from both campaigns so far. There's another 3D printing mini company. I forget what it's called though. Daggerfall or something? Daggerford? Dagger something? Somebody remind me in chat. But it's like 20 or 30 figures, so that'll give me a lot to do. And my friend owns them all, and he was like, hey, do you want to paint these? Because it'd be great to have all these extra figures for running D&D. I was like, sure. That'll be fun. He's offered to trade me some cool stuff for it. He basically wants to say, that's a lot of figures, and based on your regular price, then I was going off about Vallejo paints in a previous stream, and he was looking around and he saw some of the cool kits, and he was like, how about I get you a kit of Vallejo paints so you can compare them to the Army Painter stuff, and you can use them to paint all the Critical Role minis. And I was like, that sounds like a lovely idea. Actually, I was like, wow, that's a big investment in my head. I was like, I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but let's take a minute to think about it. So I think it'd be fun. Should be cool. There's a lot of figures. They're really well detailed. They're very cool figures, so I think it'll be a good time. Just got to get all my stuff in order and kind of put that together as kind of a featured thing. Let more people know about it. I know there's a lot of fans of Critical Role out there. I might be able to bring some in some of those folks to watch. What I'll probably do is set it up so that my stream is maybe I'll actually start painting at 8 instead of 8:30. And I'll run it for 2 hours and see if I can get them done in the 2-hour time frame, because that puts my stream ending right as Critical Role's episode begins. So that might work out well. Because anybody who's into Critical Role might swing by. And hey, if they can mention me in the stream afterwards with the Critical Role people, that'd be cool too. Alright. So my plan for getting this paint scheme done with that crazy tank color is, again, not necessarily worrying as much on the details and the individual bits, but once I get all this green base coat done, starting to do swatches of brown at an angle across it. And the nice part about it is it doesn't have to be straight. This should be super easy, and if I do it right, it'll look really cool. Like, really cool. Da, da, da. And if this guy works, it should mean that the rest of them should also be quite easy to do. All right, trash can. You big old trash can looking Mac. And then I think I go back to the oak brown, because that looks like a pretty dark brown. Hey! Night, Dad. Have a good one. Oh, I got 8 minutes. Let's see if I can pull it off. Okay. The other bit should dried. Should be good. Pick up some brown. Pick up some brown and pick a direction. I'm going to start over here. And we're going to make a bit of a zigzag. I'll try and connect the dots a little bit. Make sure it's all chunked up together. Get around the corner. Make sure I get over the top. Come down the back. I'm thinking what's going to make this line stand out properly is that sort of desert yellow stripe at the border of the green and the brown. So it should look kind of cool if I can get it done right. I'm just going to do another little loop. Doing it around the top. Patching it through. Get it tucked in there. Gonna start at the hip. Get that all brown. Oh, I'm off the camera again. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna get under this leg, around the back side, and then we're gonna go around this one here. Trying to get all the way down across the back. There we go. Matched it over there. That actually ended up working out really well. And it's going to be incredibly quick to do. Make sure I get a bit over on this part of the leg, into the foot. Alright. I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna laugh because this is gonna be so stupid easy to do. Last like 10 minutes of a stream, I'm gonna be like, hey, look, I figured out an easy way to paint battle mechs. It only took me 2 hours. Alright. Got the desert yellow ready. How thin is that? It's fairly thin. Drop the large brush, switch into a standard. And what I want to do is make a line right along the edge. This is silly. Oh, that's silly. Okay, that's really funny. That's really funny. All I gotta do is touch these lines up a little bit. Make sure the paint's going on solid. That's incredibly easy. That is super easy to do. And it looks pretty darn good. I should have done this paint job on everything. I'd be finished with all of these mechs by now. I mean, seriously, that's super easy. This is dumb. Okay, with that, I think I'll be done. Okay, so you see the big old, like, hold on, where is it? Down here. You see this? That tank? I'm like, I'm going to use that tank. I want to paint this mech like that tank. I started this 10 minutes ago. Danielle, I started it 10 minutes ago, Naf. Look at that. I mean, it's goofy. It's super easy. Like, this mech is almost completely done, and it took me 5 minutes, 10 minutes at tops. I just need to finish up some of the lines. Anyhow, that's it for me tonight. Thank you, everyone, for swinging by and hanging out while I paint some seriously old school minis. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just simple. It was just a simple thing. I didn't fret the details, basically. So, anyhow, next week I am planning on getting either back to some D&D minis or painting the remainder of a rather large dragon figure. So yeah, we'll see what's up. We'll see what happens that day. I could also put together, I've got a couple more Blood Bowl minis I'm trying to finish up. I got 4 more players for my Dark Elf team. Maybe I'll paint one of the Blitzers next week. If I put the Blitzer together, I've got it primed up. I can start the dry brush process. I do a couple layers of dry brushing. I do a couple layers for the skin with a wash, and then I start doing the cloth bits and the leather parts. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Again, 8:30 is when I start. 8's when the stream goes live, just as a heads up. And yeah, everyone stay healthy, be well, have fun, and we'll catch you later.